Hello, my name is Nicole, and thank you so much for taking the time out to listen. Today, I am talking about how we can be caught up in emotionally binding situations just by reading material that tells us we have to act a certain way. We have to be a certain way. And if we look at their checklist and find that we don't fit the script, then we can become depressed. We can have feelings of despair. So today we're breaking those chains. We're not going to put ourselves in a box or in a specific model. Those of you all who are psychologists, those of you all who are frustrated over any number of issues, you've read books, you have received degrees, and yet you still, deep within, don't feel at peace. Could it be that you are following a certain model, something that you learned over the years, and you're trying to stick it out, but it's just not working? Okay. I'm going to use an example of something that Erik Erikson came up with. Those of you all who are familiar with his work, most likely you are a psychologist or you've been in some type of counseling training. You will know that he is the one that came up with, how many stages? It was about 8 stages, right? 8 stages of psychosocial development, okay? And these stages that he came up with were to show us across our lifespan various developmental types of things that take place, okay? Now, Erik worked with Joan Erickson, okay, his wife, and this so-called easy to understand psychoanalytic theory consisted of, as I mentioned, 8 stages, okay? And these stages were to help us understand development from infancy to late adulthood, okay? Now, just to give you an overview, because I'm just going to show you how if you look at something and just receive the information for what it is, okay, it's good, it's great. But if you go deep and you start comparing your life or someone else's life to the model, things are going to get complex really quickly. Okay, so let's go over these stages. I'm going to use him as an example, and then I'm going to take you right back into spirituality, because that's what we do here, and talk about God and how he sees these sorts of things, okay? Now, the 8 stages, in summary, trust versus mistrust, that's stage number 1. That happens around infancy, 0 to 1.5. And basically at this particular stage, the child is, or infant, is basically uncertain about the world. They need to resolve all of their feelings of uncertainty. They're looking toward their primary caregiver for the stability and the consistency of care, okay? In stage 2, autonomy versus shame. This is where it's early childhood, 1.5 to 3. And this is where the child is becoming more mobile. Between the ages of 18 months and 3 years, you know, they're very independent, right? Those of us who are mothers, we saw this sort of thing take place. They didn't want to sit on our lap anymore. They want to get off our lap. They want to walk away. They want to play with their toys. You know, they want to pick out their clothes. I want to wear this shirt. I don't want to eat that. Okay. All of that takes place during stage 2. Okay. Then, of course, stage 3 comes along, you know, and this is where the child around age 3 going into 5, they're more assertive, you know, they tend to act a bit aggressive. We see this up close and personal with boys, especially. And, you know, they're just they're just developing a sense of initiative, and they want to feel secure, and they want to be able to lead others, and I want to make my own decisions. Okay. That type of thing. As young as, 3 to 5, they're already acting up. Okay. That's why some parents will say, my child, he's 4, but he's going on 40. Okay. Because this is what's taking place. But hey, it's, dare we say it, normal. It's a healthy, behavior that's going on. Now, stage 4 is what, Erik Erikson calls the industry competence versus inferiority, which at this stage it's ages 5 to 12 years, where they're learning how to do their reading and their writing, and they're developing more. They have their teachers, my teacher this, my teacher that, right? The teacher takes on a very important role in their life. They have their peer groups, and they're very, relying on their peers, and they're looking at all sorts of things, in terms of how can I win approval, from mom, from dad, from society, from, people around them. Okay. Now, by stage 5, right, 12 to 18 years, this is the identity versus role confusion stuff, okay? This is where we start seeing some interesting things play out with the adolescents. They're wearing some strange clothes, they're acting a bit peculiar, okay? But they're trying to become more independent. And this particular stage, you can lose your child between 12 to 18 years. You can lose your child in terms of a quality relationship if you are going against their independence, and, they're thinking about things like the future and their career that they want, and, relationships, and, they've got their opinion about all sorts of stuff. Okay. So this is a very significant stage, and you can mess it up if you're a controlling parent. And not only that, this is where some of the little sexual stuff is taking place with some adolescents too. They're concerned about the way their body looks, and they are very much, curious about some things when it comes to, intimacy and sex. Okay. Then there's this identity crisis that takes place with some. Okay. Because they're still trying to figure out their life and what I want to do and what I want to become. And they can be a bit rebellious too if they don't have any type of, direction or guidance in terms of what they can and cannot do and all that other stuff. Okay, so then stage 6, intimacy and isolation. This is between the ages of 18 to 40. Okay, young adulthood. There is this stage where they're, looking to be comfortable in their relationships, and, they want to be intimate. They want to feel safe. Okay. They're experiencing that love, that honest to goodness love. We're past a little childhood sweetheart kind of stuff, but I'm looking for love, or I'm in love. Okay. And then stage 7 rolls around, and, there's the generativity versus stagnation, which is the middle adulthood, ages 40 to 65 years. This is where, okay, you've got the career, you're settling down in your relationship. You may have started your family, or your family is well underway. Okay. This is your way of giving back, to society. You're being, really productive. You're involved in the community. Your work is looking good. This is typically what takes place around this stage. And then Erik Erikson's last stage that he talks about, stage 8, which is ego, integrity versus despair. You're 65 plus years, senior citizen, things are slowing down. You're thinking about retirement. You're getting some things in order so you can be able to do that sort of thing. Okay, this is typical stuff that goes on with many, many, many people. But of course, if you don't meet certain life goals and you don't reach certain stages, what happens? You become depressed. You become hopeless. You don't know what you really want to do. You start blaming other people. This is where you get the grumpy old men too, and the grumpy old women. right? Because they went through all these different stages and then they never felt fulfilled as they became older and older and older. Now, stage 8, you're supposed to be exhibiting some wisdom, right? Looking back on your life, learning from those lessons, and then, of course, helping out, the younger folks. But there are those individuals that they're not doing that, and it's unfortunate. Now, if we were to stick to these different stages or any type of model, okay, that a psychologist has come up with, okay, it can be depressing. Just because you say at this age, I'm supposed to be this. At this age, I'm supposed to have accomplished this, and I haven't done any of it. So what happens with me? And this is where people have problems with, these theories, this stuff that folks come up with. All right. Because what happens is that it's just overviews mainly. They really can't explain all of the stuff that tends to come up along the way. Okay. Yes, is there truth to this particular theory? Absolutely. 8 stages of, development, a lifespan, this is where I'm supposed to be here, and here, it looks pretty good, but maybe your life isn't reflecting that and you're late. Okay. In development. Okay. Some people will have problems with this sort of thing because, what if the issues show up along the way? What if there are some psychosocial conflicts, okay, as we move from one stage to the other? Okay, so you can't really hold, this up to a certain standard where this is how we should live. This is the way it should be. But then you get those individuals that will read these sorts of things and they'll take from it and they'll say, yes, I agree with this and this is the way it should be, And it's not right. It's not right to hold yourself up to a particular standard and put yourself into this box. Okay. He doesn't get into all of the specifics, as far as the outcome, of, one of the psychosocial stage influences, personality at a later stage. And, where exactly where exactly does this person, fall, if this particular situation has happened to them and somehow they were delayed, how do we work from getting them out of that delayed stage into the stage where they should be? He doesn't get into all of that. Okay. This, as he says, is just nothing more than a framework, for development. It's not something that we can really, hold up, to a candle and say, yes, this is. Okay. You can test it out. You can look at some things that people have done. Some people have said, their life, what they have accomplished and what they haven't accomplished. Okay. Now, I will tell you. Now I'm going to go into the spiritual side of things with these 8 stages. I will tell you that God shows us in so many different ways where we are spiritually, okay? And that there are no set standards or patterns in how we get there from here, okay? How we draw nearer to the Lord. It's not like you can really go step 1, step 2, step 3. Sometimes you're going to go step 3 and then skip to step 6, depending on, what it is that God is moving you to do, when you came to know Christ, all of that. Okay. Are there various stages of development spiritually? Yes, there are. But once again, we can't hold folks accountable to those different stages. And there's so many different people with different theories, psychologists and ministers and, all of that. It's not a good idea to get caught up in, all of this theory stuff. Okay. Because then what you're doing is you are actually finding yourself being distracted from the Word of God. Okay. Because God is the one that's going to be that spiritual entity, if you will, that's going to check you on some areas of your life where, yes, you are not where you need to be with him, though, not with man, not with woman, not with what society tells you, but with what God wants you to be. That's why we go to him, because it can get quite confusing with men and women who sit back and study our minds and study our mannerisms, our behaviors, who say where we should be developmentally and all of that. Yes, there is some good information out there, and God, who is responsible for all intelligence, he will lead us toward different things that can help us understand more about ourselves. But we don't want to put ourselves in a box where we cannot come up out the box, and it's only about this one's theory and that one's theory, and this is why I am better than you because I accomplished this development and that development and this stage and that stage and all of that. No. So let us just take his model and look at the fact that there are those individuals out there who had some issues with trust as well as mistrust, okay, early on, way back when, during infancy. A child trusted a parent was going to take care of them and didn't. Okay, so now there's some abandonment issues. Okay, because now I've gone through these different stages and I'm still with that same parent that didn't make me feel, comfortable and safe. And so I'm going through these different stages with some abandonment issues. Okay. What do you think God's going to do with that? Well, he's going to put some advisors around us. He's going to put some counselors, some psychologists, and, some other folks that's going to help us through. But all the while we are relying and trusting in him, not just in the man or the woman that's making us feel safe and, showing us the reason why we're going through much. Okay. We're also praying to the Lord. We're also asking him to direct us to some scriptures in his word that will help us feel that he is that good shepherd, that he is going to lead us, that he's going to guide us. And then there's plenty of stories in the Bible where God did just that. Okay. So a person didn't feel alone, didn't feel like, they were in a dangerous world and left to die. You see. And that all comes with a relationship with Christ. But if I don't want a relationship with Christ and I'm going to zero in on what man can do for me and woman can do for me and only that, at some point that abandonment stuff just might come back around again. My trust issues may show up in a relationship with someone. I thought I had them, under control when I went through counseling, and now here they go again. Okay. We want permanent fixes. We want some deliverance. We don't want any band-aids. Okay. If that care back when you were a child was, harsh and it was cold and you couldn't rely on some folks and things like that. And then the mistrust shows up and it continues on. You start influencing other folks to be just like you. Okay. Honey, I don't trust them and you shouldn't either. Right. And some of that happened to us where because somebody didn't feel like the world was safe and the parents didn't make them feel like the world was safe and didn't care for them, they started putting their mistrust of others onto us. So then we walk around feeling like we can't trust anyone, not even Jesus himself. So that's why a lot of folks don't come to know Christ because, look, these adults failed me. Now you're telling me I'm supposed to believe in some invisible entity? That's just a little bit too much for me. Right? Okay. So looking at, once again, Erickson's stages of development, we've got this thing dealing with autonomy versus shame and doubt, right? So if I'm between the ages of 18 months and 3, okay, and I'm trying to assert my independence, but along comes a parent who tells me, no, I'm going to help you with this. No, you don't have to worry about picking this up. I'll pick the toy up. I'll pick out what you wear. You get some of these parents that they don't know when to back off. The child is screaming their head off. They want to spank them for being mean and disrespectful and out of line when all I'm trying to do is assert my independence. Stop picking out my clothes for me. Stop picking up my toys. I'll have my toy right here. I want to play with my toy. Stop coming over here telling me to pick this particular shoe or this particular shirt. No, I want to do it. I want to do it, right? Okay, so you're doing a child a disservice if you're that parent or grandparent or a caretaker who wants to do everything for a child who you can clearly see is wanting to demonstrate the skills and the abilities that he or she has thus far and wants to learn and wants to grow. But I'm afraid he or she's going to mess up. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to have an accident. And I don't want to clean it up. That's usually why you get some of these parents that become this way, because they don't want to clean up accidents. But sometimes accidents are going to happen. And so we just have to go, okay, yep, he spilled the cup. You know, he dropped such and such all over the floor, whatever. All right. But at least he's learning. At least he's growing. Okay. We just have to caution him not to do that again. Okay. Let's show him. Let's make it easier for him. Let's give him a better cup. Let's give him another way of holding up this, that, and the other. Okay. I mean, there's ways to work with the child so that they still feel independent, they feel confident, and they feel secure in, their own abilities and being able to survive and all that good stuff in this crazy world. All right. But if I'm constantly being criticized and I'm being controlled and I'm not given an opportunity to stand up for myself and, I'm starting to feel like I'm inadequate and I have low self-esteem and all that, that stuff is going to go into the next stage. Right? The initiative versus guilt around age 3 and continuing to age 5, according to Erickson. Okay. And then if this sort of thing is going to take place during this stage, all right, now what's going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? I'm going to start to feel slow. I'm not going to accomplish all that I need to accomplish. I'm going to be stagnant. And this is where you have some, school related issues, because someone was holding me back, prior to the age of 5. All right. And then that same parent becomes upset because you don't want to do this and you don't want to do that. See, because teachers start calling the parents out on some of this stuff. And because they can see based on how the child is behaving in the classroom. And so now the child wants to the parent wants to take it out on the child. Okay. Why are you acting like this? How come you're not exerting your independence? I've taught you these things. Did you really, or were you too busy making sure that the child didn't, have these accidents and making sure that the child stuff was picked up off the floor and you wouldn't tell them and you would do other things for them, like put their clothes out and all of that. Well, I'm just helping. No, what you're doing is the child is growing in the way that God is moving upon them and you are stagnating their growth. Okay. And some parents continue to do this. Even when the child is old enough to put on his or her own shoes, even when the child is old enough to take care of his or her own business. And here comes mom. I want to help you out, son. Okay. Lord Jesus, help us. Okay. And this overprotection of children, that also hinders them. I will tell you that if you become too protective and you become the strict one and my child's not going here, no, my child's not doing that, and the child tries to go and do it anyway, and you punish the child and you say, no, you can't do this and you can't do that, you're messing up your relationship with your child. You are. And eventually that child's not going to like you so much and they're going to rebel. How do I know this? Stage 4, industry competence versus inferiority, right? Erickson says children are at the stage, right? Ages 5 to 12 years where they're learning so many different things. But once again, we've got some folks that want to stop process. God is moving them toward higher learning, moving them toward, some exerting some of their, skills and, their confidence, and they're achieving goals and they want to do some stuff. And then along comes someone to make them feel inferior. Okay. And now they're feeling incompetent and they're saying stuff like, I can't do this and I can't do that. And mom, why don't you help me? And then now mom's saying, well, I don't want to help you, but you helped me here and you helped me there. And when I tried to do it on my own, you told me, no, I just need your help. Right. Okay. God is moving on some parents, telling them, listen, this is what you need to do. Some grandparents, you can witness to your, daughters and sons about this sort of thing. Let the child do some things on their own. Stop picking out what club they're supposed to be a part of. Stop picking out what activity they should be connected with. Stop telling them that you're going to help them with different things that they can do themselves. Stop it. You're doing a disservice to them. And then you know what that child's going to expect. They're going to expect that grandparent to do the same thing. Okay? Well, mom and dad does it for me. You're going to do it too. I bet I don't do it. So stage 5, identity versus role confusion. Oh, now we're getting into why is it that the boy wants to dress like a girl? Why is it that the girl wants to dress like a boy? Well, blame it on the parents. Blame it on, some issues that's going on within them. Blame it on whoever. But the point is that we've got some issues going on. And they have a role issue that's taking place. I don't know what I really want to be. I don't know if today I want to be a girl. I don't know if tomorrow I want to be a boy. I'm tired of conforming to society and what society tells me. And this doesn't have to happen between 12 to 18. This can happen much later in life. You see why we can't stick to certain theories and stages, and this is how it's supposed to be? Because sometimes people might look really good on paper, right? Might look really good in the family photos. They're moving along each stage. It looks healthy. It feels right. But then something happens and an identity crisis takes place, and they want to be something more than what, folks have told them they should be. And they want to experiment, in ways sexually that would make your face red. Okay. They don't know what they want to be. Somebody along the way may have told them, no, you don't want to be that. You want to be this. Now I'm uncomfortable. I don't feel so good. I don't feel so confident because somebody snatched my identity from me. They told me that this would look prettier on me. This would make me look better, but I didn't really want that. I wanted this. Okay. They forced me to like only this particular. Well, I was good. I liked that particular group. But then you come along and you said, that's what I should do. Oh, now that you said that, maybe I don't want to like that particular, gender. Maybe I want to like this particular gender. You see, sometimes parents can run their mouths a little too much. Sometimes they can be so mean and angry about a child's choice or the way they're behaving, or maybe they're not behaving in any type of dysfunctional way. They're just confident in their identity, but then a parent comes along and messes them up because of all their strict, behavior, their rules, their regulations, and this is how you're supposed to be. Well, I was okay, but now that you came along and you said all this stuff, no, forget it. I am going to be over here messing with this one and messing with that one. And no, I'm not going to look the way you want me to look. Okay. God, once again, we can allow God to move if we want, or we don't. And sometimes if we put so much God early on in life, then the child will start rebelling during that identity crisis stage, 12 to 18. If we don't allow God to show up, then that child could still be rebelling. If the child starts taking an interest in some things that are spiritual, that's uplifting, that's, causing them to want to do something better, then encourage them. Why discourage them because somebody shoved a Bible down your throat, because somebody made you feel angry, disrespected or whatever? Why take that from the child if you know for a fact that it's helping them? Spirituality is actually helping them. Okay. Stage 6, intimacy versus isolation, ages 18 to 40. Right? That's a huge gap. That's a huge gap. A lot can happen between ages 18 and 40. Someone's theory, right? Eric's theory says that, we're sharing ourselves more intimately with others at that stage. We're exploring relationships. That's leading toward longer term commitments and all this other stuff. Are we really? Some people aren't doing that at that age or age gap. Okay. And some are doing it, but they're doing it in some unhealthy ways because my mom and dad weren't there for me. So now I want to date older women and older men. I'm feeling a bit not confident. I'm lacking some self-esteem. Maybe I don't want any type of intimacy. Maybe I'm scared to commit because of all the stuff that happened in those previous stages or didn't happen. So now I'm feeling a bit lonely. I'm feeling a bit depressed. I can't connect with people like I really want to because of some hindrances from some controlling parents or some strict, caretakers or some people who sexually or emotionally or physically abused, right, in previous stages. So it becomes very difficult during 18 to 40 for some folks to truly connect with people. And then some folks will still have some problems by, 40 to 65 in that generativity versus stagnation. Okay, that middle adulthood. I was supposed to grow, but I'm not really growing. I was supposed to have an appreciation of family, and I was supposed to start my own family. But I'm late in life because of some stuff I was doing, dating this one, dating that one, having some unhealthy connections, not knowing, where I stood in life, right? Some folks are going through this sort of thing, having their identity crises and so forth, even right in through ages 40 to 65. Now, though, they're trying to, pull on a fountain of youth through the youth. Dating young people, looking at young shows, dressing young, acting young. Looking in the mirror, thinking that they're still young. And for some folks, they know better. And then, of course, the final stage, right? That ego, integrity versus despair. Spiritually, I might not be where I should be. Growing older, right? 65 plus. Eric's model is saying that they're supposed to be what? Around that age. Feeling productive. Feeling like they've accomplished something in life, that they should feel successful. But there's a lot of older people that I've come across in my life that didn't feel that way. If anything, they checked out of here feeling quite depressed and hopeless and wondering, what did I do with my life? One minute I was young, looking in the mirror, looking at my photographs, and now I'm older and I'm not so happy. I'm not exhibiting any type of wisdom. I'm looking back on my life and I don't know if I really learned anything. And then I don't have any closure, still holding some feelings of resentment and bitterness and upset. I don't feel complete. Some of these people, they don't even want to accept the fact that they're dying and that they need to make good use of their time before they close their eyes. Some folks fear death so much to the point where they're hindering themselves and other people. They're not fully enjoying life. And so God looks at our issues that we're faced with, whatever stage we're in. And he says, but come to me. I will take on your burdens. I will give you peace. I will give you rest. I will give you some understanding as to what is taking place in these development stages. And I will tell you what you can do to be able to get over the ego issues, get over those issues of despair. I will show you that you need to spend some more time connecting with some quality individuals and not these people that make you feel depressed, not these people that put you in boxes. I need for you to cut away some activity that's hindering you, that's keeping you bound. I need you to take up some new activity that's going to make you feel at peace and make you feel happy and make you feel like your life is worth more. But how are you going to know if you don't accept me as your personal Lord and Savior? How are you going to know if you don't read my word? How are you going to know if you're not connecting with the right people? How are you going to know what I can do for you if you keep holding on to the past? If you keep holding on to the fact that mom and dad, yes, they didn't make you feel stable, but I can make you feel stable, the Lord says. Yes, there were some areas in your life where you were abused, but you're going to keep blaming me about that? How about you look at some things that are taking place and how you might be able to be free if you follow me? I was there when it took place. I was there, he says. Some people that I gave them a gift when you come along, and they were supposed to take care of that gift. And in all of my grace and my mercy, they were supposed to make wrongs right, and they didn't. But now you're old enough that you can take care of yourself. You're old enough to be able to look out for some other folks. Why don't you do that? I can give you the tools. You see? But some people are so badly damaged that they're not interested in anything spiritual. They don't want to come up higher. And if anything, they feel very depressed. And they don't want to come up out of their depression. There are necessary resources to help some folks who continue to feel hopeless, who continue to not even eat healthy, right? And if you're not eating healthy, you don't think healthy either. If you're not sleeping well, you don't end up doing well during the day either. But they think that they can keep operating on fumes. They think that they can just say a couple prayers and they'll be okay. And meanwhile, God is saying, but there's some unresolved issues that's going on with you. There's some things that's happening within you. There's some things that you still need to come up out of. Some binding situations, some dysfunction, some toxic stuff. Are you willing to hold my hand? Are you willing to walk with me? So when we recognize where we can be better in our lives, that's when we start getting the necessary resources and we grow. And then as we grow, we're also learning. And as we're learning, we're also developing understanding. As we're developing understanding, we're also drawing nearer to our Father who we've accepted. And then He will continue to guide us every step of the way if that's what we want. Well, I thank you so much for taking the time out to listen. Please don't put yourself in a box thinking that you're supposed to follow the checklist that somebody else has come up through theories, through tests and so forth. Even if you don't follow that checklist, that's okay, because God can take you wherever you are, in whatever stage you are, and bring healing to your wounded self. Thank you for listening. Please do check the description box for anything related to your situation. Also, if you haven't given, please do give. You've been listening to YouTube NM Enterprise 7. Feel free to subscribe. To God be the glory.